So in the end, you're going to be in a society where you're going to come to your work and they're going to say, do something new today. You can tell AI and big data and quantum computing and these apps what to do, and they'll do it. If you come to a society, and just think about it, you come to a society where if you're told what to do, you're no longer relevant. So every single thing that you do really has to come from you, has to be new. That's creativity, right? And so at that point, it's like, okay, what's going to stimulate it? What's going to make that happen? And so the great part is that you're a musician, you have a superpower, and in time, the number one curriculum in US education is going to be music. The basic concept is that I want to talk about what's going to make you successful in the future, right? Because in the end, that's what you want to know. The current education system is not going to give that to you. And the one thing not being taught in high school or college is creativity. So that's what we're going to talk about, because in the end, that's what is going to make you successful. I'll basically go into what creativity is, why being a musician is the way to stimulate it, right? Ask any one of those teachers and administrators, explain to me what creativity is as a process, and they're not going to be able to do it. So if you can't explain what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing. I go a step further. I say, if you can't explain what you're talking about as a process, then you don't know what you're talking about. So any teacher and any administrator that says over teaching creativity, they don't have a process. They'll say, well, we try to get the students here, go over here and talk together and work together. And sometimes creativity happens when they're alone. And sometimes creativity happens when they just get out of bed. That's not a process. That's like a wing and a prayer. We have to get into what creativity is as a process. And that's where, I'm talking about where music is stimulating creativity, because I can talk about it as a process. Making you memorize information and regurgitate it on a test, they know that as a process, right? And so they're really, really good at it. And the issue is that for thousands of years, humans have been memorizing information, right? And so they're just continuing it now. But for thousands of years, when you memorize information, that was always used for survival and success, right? So if you memorize information, how to make, metal out of ore that nobody else knew, then you can make swords, you can make weapons, and all of a sudden your town, your village, your city, your state can now win wars. You memorize how to grow crops. So all the information was always used for survival and success. Now the information is used to regurgitate on the test. And the issue is that what you guys are doing subconsciously, what you don't even know, is that you are defending yourself by memorizing information, regurgitating it on a test, and then forgetting it. That's a self-defense mechanism, because everything can be looked up here. The number one thing that stimulates creativity is art and music. They're both the same thing. There's volumes written about what is art, what is music, flowery language, academic language. In the end, it's basically like a physics terminology. It's art is frozen music and music is liquid art. They're both the same thing. So when you're doing art, you're painting, you're drawing, it's a very slow process, because you're putting out creativity, you're getting it back. Music is faster. And within music, there's different domains, playing acoustic instruments. So percussion is the lowest, then you have brass, then you have woodwinds, and at the very pinnacle, guess what? It's strings. And strings is what stimulates the most creativity. And with music, when you're playing music, you're in a constant creative act. And the constant creative act is that you're listening for how you're playing, you're listening for how everyone else is playing, and you are using your mind to create something, you're using your hands to create something. So it's on multiple levels. You pretty much understand that all of you are being trained to compete with a smartphone. And this, you think, oh, it's just a really simple device. This is a multi-billion-dollar value device. You go, what are you talking about? It's only a few $100. It takes a multi-billion-dollar company to make this. It takes a multi-billion-dollar company to design it. It takes a multi-billion-dollar companies to have apps for it. It takes a multi-billion-dollar companies to have satellite infrastructures. So, when you have a desk, yeah, that's a couple of $100, but this is a value device that's multi-billion-dollar. And you think, well, it's just a phone. But think about a mobile device being a little centimeter chip that can put 5 screens on any wall, a screen for a keyboard, and you could communicate with anybody you want and just type on any surface. And you can use apps and pay by the second, by the minute, by the hour. I think in time, in a short while, we're going to have what I call triad apps. Let's say it's an engineering app. And these apps, right? The apps are not located on your phone. You have a window to the app, but all the apps are located, in the central database, be it in Google, Microsoft, Apple, wherever. And so they start having an engineering app, and it's using AI, big data, and quantum computing. And so let's say you have 1,000 engineers that are doing this work, doing tolerances for a stadium, and they take a year to do it. So 1,000 engineers working a year on these tolerances, other things in engineering. This app is going to do it in 10 minutes. Game over. So at that point, you have half the engineers, some with 10, 15, 20 years experience, some with a degree, some with 2 degrees, are now out of a job. So you're in engineering school and you're going to go, okay, what are you guys going to do? You're going to talk to the teacher, you're going to talk to the administrator, says, what are you going to do different to make me successful and to make me relevant in this new age? And they're going to shrug and go, we don't know. And that'll go to the financial field, that'll go for any field. You're being asked to memorize information, then you're being graded on how well you regurgitate that information on the test. Nowhere in life is that going to be your work. Nowhere. So you're doing that in high school, you're going to be doing that in college, and you're going to get out and you're going to be in a job that asks for something altogether different, right? And at this point, Google, Microsoft, others are going, okay, the students leaving college, we can't even hire them. So they don't even care about your college resume. They give you tests anyway. And what they're testing is your creativity. Imagine everyone knows right now that if you want to be an athlete, you have to lift weights. 20 years ago and before, people didn't realize that. They thought if you lifted weights, you have to be a weight lifter. But now, I don't care if you're a swimmer, if you're a golfer, you lift weights. If you don't want to lift weights, don't be an athlete. Go get a desk job. So nobody questions the fact that you have to lift weights for physical workout in order to be an athlete. So nobody's going to question in the future that to be creative in any STEM field or any field that they're going to require that of you, you're going to have a cognitive workout with an instrument, playing an instrument. So all corporations now have a gym. In time, all corporations are going to have ensembles, quartets, because they're going to go, okay, in order to keep our staff creative, they're going to need to be playing on instruments. The core creativity is that you ask questions. And questions, you all think, in school, the question is usually very limited to, that subject at hand. And you all are guessing that it's just a kind of a request for information. How do I get here? How many years for this? The question is actually a metaphysical tool. And it opens a place in your mind for answers to fit. But what you're doing when you're learning to play, you're in continuous question mode. Because if you weren't in continuous question mode the entire time that you're playing, then you wouldn't care what you're playing. You wouldn't care if you sounded in tune. You wouldn't care if you're in tune with anybody else. You wouldn't care. And so you're always asking questions. And so that continuous flow of asking questions is what is getting the process, that feedback process of creativity. And so people are born with usually something that they like. And the more that they like something, the more they're going to be asking questions. So if you like math, right, then numbers speak to you. Like you look at calculations, you look at formulas, and they have a language for you. Just like Beethoven looked at a piano keyboard and it spoke to him. Like Michelangelo looked at just a block of marble and it speaks to him. I look at a block of wood and it speaks to me. When we have passion for something, then you are internally asking questions. But if you don't like something, then it's hard to learn. Intelligence and emotion are two separate components. You've always had emotion along with intelligence, so you always thought they go together. But there are people that have intelligence and they have no emotion. Those people are called depressed. So you can have intelligence. And if you don't have emotion, you can't have passion. And so again, we're looking at what art and music do is that they generate emotion within you. Do something you don't like. Say there's a class you don't like. It's always hard because when you don't like something, you don't have any passion for it. It's always like twice as hard. It's not that it's even difficult. It's just hard because you don't have any passion for it. Do something you don't like, a subject you don't like for 20 minutes, then take a break and then do what Einstein did when he got stuck. Start playing your instrument for 20 minutes, play something you like, and that you have an emotional connection. then go back to that assignment for 20 minutes that you didn't like and see if doing that assignment the second 20 minutes is going to be much easier. Because what happens is you're full of emotion and then you're funneling that emotion into that subject. And all of a sudden, it's going to be easier to understand. It's going to be faster to do. It's going to be easier to do. And the reason is because you've generated emotion. If you want to use electricity in a generator, then you could use that for, to power something. So you've generated this emotion. And now you're using it for the subject you didn't like because you didn't have passion for it, right? If you have passion for it, playing music is not going to do anything because it's like you have enough energy or emotional energy surrounding it already. If you have like no emotional energy, you can't stand it. And all of a sudden you generate some emotional energy and then you funnel it. You'll see that all of a sudden when intelligence is surrounded by emotion, you're able to do things better, faster, and easier. So you're going to be going into a society that the only people that are going to be relevant are going to be the ones that can be creative and that can come to work and do something new every single time. You guys are right in the middle of going to be a sea of change. So kind of right at the end of where college still makes sense. But as soon as you're going to have these apps, as soon as corporations are no longer going to require degrees and they're going to test you on creativity with these weird quizzes, which is what they do, and that's how they hire, then everyone's going to go, what's the point of paying $120,000 for a piece of paper that no corporation is interested in anymore? That's the main takeaway. That's the most important thing you're doing. And the fact that you love it, all your friends that aren't playing and thinking, oh, I'm doing something more relevant by taking this one extra class while you're playing on an instrument, they're not.